Good morning. Always nice to begin our shows with you as we come to you each and every weekday morning. We're going to get to it early today because I'm very happy to welcome our first guest of the show for the first time on the show. Her name is Melissa Fiegel, and she is an acupuncturist, and you're going to understand why I'm stressing that fact as we talk with the Point Acupuncture in Hickson. So nice talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I feel like we've been chatting for a while, which we have been off camera. And as you and I were talking, different people would come through the studio and they would turn around and say, oh, can I ask you a question? And what about this? Let's talk your background a little bit, Melissa, because people might be surprised at just how much education and practice goes into getting the acupuncture licensing, right?
Yes. So the basic acupuncture licensing, you have to have a master's degree to get an acupuncture license. Acupuncture school is a master's degree. So it's about a 4-year program with a residency involved in that. And then that gets you a license, and then a handful of us go on to get doctorates as well.
Which you did.
Yes, I did.
So you were talking to a coworker earlier, and you said she was asking you about a long COVID situation. You're seeing that. You're helping people who are dealing with long COVID. You're able to help people, you long hear it, it can help with infertility issues.
Yes.
Sometimes it can help with asthmatic issues. We have a lot of that around here. It helps a lot with mental health. Is that correct?
It does.
And then your background is in sports. So if you have a kid with a sports injury, or you yourself, you might be able to help there too.
Yes, absolutely.
So what I did not know until talking to her is that you were one of 16, is that right, acupuncturists?
I think there's 16 of us now. I moved here 2 years ago and I was number 13.
Okay.
So I think there are about 16 of us.
But in Florida, where she chose to come here for the mountains, where you had been, there were hundreds. Is that right?
I moved here from Gainesville, Florida, where there are 2 acupuncture schools. So the joke is that nobody ever leaves.
Gotcha.
There were 130 of us, maybe.
Okay.
Something like that.
So I want to be careful how I go into this, but there is a difference, you say, between acupuncture and dry needling.
Yes.
What's the difference?
Basically, the difference is dry needling is acupuncture, but it's done by someone who's not an acupuncturist, generally. Dry needling is generally done for muscle therapies, like, torn shoulders, hurt knees, things like that, which is why it's done by physical therapists, usually. Acupuncture is done by someone who went to acupuncture school, and acupuncture is a system of medicine. It encompasses everything, whereas dry needling is more about injuries.
So I had dry needling done once, and it hurt. That's a common thing you hear?
Unfortunately.
But acupuncture, by its very nature, is not intended to hurt?
No, not at all. Very, very often, people don't even know I'm doing it. I get people who have come in for their first time and they're scared because they're called needles, right? I wish they weren't called needles. They're so tiny.
You brought some. Can
I did.
I hold one
Sure,
up?
certainly.
So, okay,
and these are packages of needles.
Oh, so there are multiple in here.
There are multiples in here.
Okay, I want to take this one.
That is ear seeds. Those are little to-go points that we put on the ears to kind of keep the points activated throughout you going out into life.
Okay, so educate me a little bit here on the premise of acupuncture, and that is that there are grids kind of within the body?
Yes, there are meridians on the body. There are 12 main meridians that we work with. There are more, but we work with kind of 12 main ones. And they are the roads that the acupuncture points are actually on. And the acupuncture needles go into the acupuncture points. All of the meridians run together. It's kind of a closed system, and they run into each other and then they come back down. They run head to toe, basically. So one will run from your toes to your head and then back down and then back up. So one of the things that acupuncturists do is they check your pulses. And this is going to sound kind of weird, but there are 6 different pulse positions on each wrist. So we're checking 6 on one and 6 on the other. And what we're looking for is to see how those meridians are working together. It's almost like a racetrack, and I'm looking to find the blockages, like the car wrecks.
It's also interesting because unlike most medical situations where you're looking for the cause of something, in acupuncture you don't need to know the cause because you're kind of like an engineer. You're balancing things. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, we look at things very different than Western MDs do. We kind of try to, it's not so much about the Western medical diagnosis. It's more about helping your system balance itself out naturally. You know, the body strives for homeostasis, but stuff gets in the way. Emotions, injuries, trauma, mental, physical stuff, emotional stuff, whatever it is, it just kind of clogs it up. And that's when on that racetrack you get a little tiny wreck. We can actually feel that stuff on the pulses, which I know sounds wacky, but
no, it doesn't, not to me.
but that's how it tells us what points we're going to do and where we're going to go and how we're going to approach the treatment.
It's almost like if you know how to read your body, the body's telling you what it needs.
Yes.
Is that fair to?
Absolutely. We'll check pulses and it'll, you know, you're standing there for a second and you look at the patient and you're like, do you have a headache? And they're like, how do you know this? Like, you can feel that on the pulses.
Did you say that you sometimes can help with tinnitus?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, we've been doing this show for a lot of years. And so several ago, 7 or 8 years ago, the big topic of conversation was how inflammation was really our enemy in this country. I can only imagine how that's progressed in those 7 or 8 years. That's a lot of the root cause, though, for some of the ailments that come your way?
It is, yes. And acupuncture can help with that, but when it comes to inflammation, we also talk about diet, we talk about stressors, we talk about, you know, what are you doing? Like dealing with athletes, we talk about inflammation a lot. Because athletes, they're going to come in and we're going to smooth everything out and balance everything out, and then they're just going to go out in the world and mess it up again. You know, that's just kind of the nature of the game.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so it's that balance of, okay, we're gonna work on all of this, but now we're gonna talk to you about these are foods you can eat, these are foods you shouldn't eat, these are stretches, these are therapies. You should also talk to this person about things you can do other than just being in the office.
Yeah.
You know, it's the education piece is huge with everyone, really. I talk to people about desk chairs, and when COVID happened, it was everyone overnight went from working at a desk to working like this on their couch. And it was, my practice closed for almost 2 months, but I spent most of that time on the phone or on FaceTime walking people through stretches or things they could do or change this about your desk. It was, yeah.
So, okay, so is acupuncture by its nature intended to be the sole treatment for somebody, or is it an aid and you do other things too?
The way I view it, I want you to be getting as much help as you can to some extent. I mean, you don't want too many hands on something because then the water gets muddy and you don't know what's working.
Right.
But if me personally, depending on what you have going on, I might want you to be working with someone else also. Okay. Especially with mental health.
Okay, on that one, is it helpful for you for someone to come into the practice and just tell you, this is what I'm here for? Or do you kind of like to ask them a few questions but then feel your way into what you think is really going on?
It's both. People come in and they say, you know, oh, I have plantar fasciitis. And I'm like, okay. And then I do ortho exams and, you know, check them out and check their pulses and talk to them a little bit. And maybe they don't have plantar fasciitis. Maybe they have a tight anterior tibialis, which looks clinically just like plantar fasciitis, but actually isn't.
How many visits do people typically see you? Like, what's the typical duration?
Sure. I always ask everybody after the first appointment to come back in a week or so, because then we check in. Because at the first appointment, I have no idea how many visits you're going to need. There's no way to know. If you've never had acupuncture, which most people in this area haven't, I don't know how you're going to respond. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how you're going to sleep, how you're going to feel afterwards, you know, what changes are going to take place. So then you come back in a week and you say, oh, this happened and this happened and this got better and this got a little worse, but I slept great, or my headaches went away, and any of that. And then we make a plan, because now I know how you're going to respond. And it can be anything from 3 visits for, you know, a hurt knee to you come in every other week for a couple months.
So I had a long conversation with some friends yesterday, and it just one thing led to another. But the topic kind of tended to be technology and how it's really our enemy to a large degree, and especially our kids. Our kids were our focus. And this kind of feeling we all had that it's almost rewiring your brain because, is this something that could be beneficial for children to do?
Yes.
As a preventive measure almost, like to keep those blockages from happening?
Sort of, as a combative measure.
Yeah.
More so. You know, the brain isn't meant to be on 24/7 in this heightened state. And one thing that acupuncture does is it balances your nervous system really, really well. There's parasympathetic and sympathetic, right? There's fight or flight and rest and digest. And with phones and technology, we spend a lot more time in fight or flight than we're really supposed to. So acupuncture balances that out. So it puts you, you're still gonna look at your phone, kids are still gonna play video games. We're all still gonna do all the things, but it starts you from a better point to do those things versus already being way into fight or flight when you pick up your phone and you've got 30 emails and 20 text messages and bells going off all over the place.
Yeah, I feel that here sometimes. Like just when I'm sitting down to do one thing, 4 other things hit me and they're all important, but there's just this tension you get because you can't do it all at one time.
Right. And that's training your brain to have some sort of stimulus every, I don't know, 20 seconds, just ping, 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 ping.
Yeah.
So then you get kids who can't sit still because they're not trained to.
Is ADHD something you see?
It is. I work with a lot of kids. They just put a pediatrician office behind my office. They just moved in and we share a wall. So now the joke when I tell patients is if you hear a screaming baby, I'm not the one causing it because it's...
So I know you had this background in sports medicine. What got you into the acupuncture? I've got like a minute.
Oh goodness. I was working as a massage therapist. I had a big fancy corporate job and I quit that to go to massage school so that I could go to med school and have a job. And I blew my knee out training for a half marathon. And I wound up in an acupuncturist office thinking, okay, sure, woo-woo, hooey, whatever. And he fixed my knee with like 4 needles. And I was in the process of applying to med schools and figuring out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to go into. And I was like, okay, where do I go to learn how to do this?
And the rest is history.
And then here I am.
And then our mountains called, and so she and her husband moved up from Florida a couple of years ago to be here. So here's where you will find her office. Just don't go to the pediatric side, come to her, the Point Acupuncture on Northgate Park. Her phone number is 451-1600. Follow her on Facebook at the Point Acupuncture. Her name is Melissa Fiegel. Her friends call her Mel. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Latrice Curry with Local 3 News. This Heart Month, you can be the